This is, without a doubt, the most f***ed up thing I've ever read. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis was published in 1991, and it's about a handsome young man named Patrick Bateman who lives in New York City, works on Wall Street, lives in a luxury apartment, sleeps with lots of women, has an active social life, and enjoys murdering and torturing people and animals in his spare time. The film adaptation came out in 2000. It, of course, stars Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman. It was directed by Mary Harron, and it was written by Mary Harron and Guinevere Turner. I'm going to start by giving some general thoughts about the book, and then I'll talk about the movie and how it compares to the novel, and at the end I'll tell you which one I think is better. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't read the book or seen the film, here's your warning. First things first, this book is absolutely disgusting, and I kind of hated it. Before we get into all that though, some other things about the novel. None of the characters in this book are likable whatsoever, which I'm sure is probably part of the point of the book, but it didn't make for a very enjoyable reading experience, at least for me. Bateman and his friends, or colleagues I guess, they are entirely self-obsessed and extremely materialistic. And in my opinion, this book drags, and that's primarily due to the fact that there's no story. Nothing really happens. I mean, things happen, but nothing happens. It's the same shit over and over again. Bateman meets up with his friends. He describes what they're wearing. They talk about where they're going to eat dinner. They debate fashion. They gossip about colleagues. Bateman describes what he watched on the Patty Winters show that morning. Bateman meets up with women. He describes what they're wearing. They have sex, or they don't. And that just repeats ad nauseum. And for those of you thinking that's the point of the book, Ellis is, commenting on the emptiness of Wall Street yuppies in the 1980s. Okay, sure, that's fine, but for me at least, it didn't make an enjoyable or interesting read at all. And then occasionally, throughout the book, Bateman will murder somebody. And holy shit, the descriptions and depictions of these murders and torture, really, are insanely graphic. I mean, it makes the movie, which I'll get to in a second, it makes the movie look like a Disney movie in comparison. I would say that you would have to read the book to fully understand the level of depravity and just horror of what Bateman does to people in this. But I wouldn't recommend anybody read this book after my experience with it. I have never read anything so graphic and stomach-churning. The film is so tame compared to the book. The film is rated R, but I think mainly because of the sex scenes and the language in the movie, because the movie doesn't really contain any gore at all. There's a lot of murders in the movie, but everything happens off screen. So for example, Bateman kills this character named Paul Allen, who's played by Jared Leto in the film, whose name is Paul Owen in the book, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. He takes an axe to his face. In the film, you never actually see the axe hit his face. It all happens off camera. In the book, however, there's this really graphic description of how the axe hits him like right around here, and it separates the bottom jaw from the rest of his face, and all this stuff comes out, and I don't even really want to think about it or talk about it, but it gives you one tiny little example of the graphic nature of the book compared to the film. Also in the book, Bateman kills a little boy at the zoo. Stabs him in the throat, I think it was. And that doesn't make it into the film. I think because the director probably understood that the audiences, even that would be too far for them. They would not care for that. And it was a really disturbing part of the book. Aside from the graphic, gory murder scenes, there's also some really graphic sex scenes in the book. And this spurs me on to start her very hard while Sabrina keeps the that hangs over her face, which is covered with Christie's. I pull my out of Christie's and force Sabrina to on it before I push it back into Christie's. However, I did find some aspects of the book entertaining. Bateman has a entertaining inner monologue sometimes, and he also does this really interesting thing where he kind of weaves or kind of drops little hints of his insanity into everyday conversations with people, and you're not really sure if he's actually saying it or if it's all in his head. I'm pretty sure it's all in his head. But like he's talking to some woman he's supposed to go on a date with over the phone, and he mentions that he has a girl's head in his freezer. He tells some woman at another time that he's into murders and executions when he's actually saying mergers and acquisitions, which is, I think, is pretty clever. That makes it into the film verbatim. There's also a pretty funny exchange between the characters in the book at one point where they obsess over whose business card is better. Also makes its way into the film.
New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this. That is really nice.
In the book, there's a character, a private investigator, who is hired to investigate the disappearance of Paul Owen / Paul Allen in the film. That character in the movie is played by Willem Dafoe, and he's a much bigger character in the film, but like in the book, his investigation ultimately leads nowhere. And, you know, there's no resolution to the book or the film. Bateman is never caught. He's never held accountable for his actions. He never learns anything. He doesn't really change. He kind of starts descending a little bit into madness towards the end, but the end of the book and the film, it's just kind of, you assume he is just going to keep on killing. If anything, this book is a decent commentary on the toxic, hedonistic machismo culture of Wall Street in the 1980s, but for me personally, it was a painfully dreadful read, and I hated almost every minute of it. But I will certainly never forget it, that's for sure. The movie, on the other hand, I found pretty entertaining, and I think a lot of that is due to the script and the fact that they did not include a lot of gore, or really any of it, and Christian Bale's performance. He really goes all in on this performance.
Hip to be square. To kill a lot of people!
I also really liked the way that the writers of the film incorporated Bateman's monologues about popular music. In the book, there's just these random chapters where he just kind of goes on a diatribe about Huey Lewis and the News, or Genesis and Phil Collins, or Whitney Houston. And then after that ends, then the rest of the book picks up. But in the film, they incorporate these monologues about popular artists into scenes of Bateman preparing to murder somebody.
The whole album has a clear, crisp sound and a new sheen of consummate professionalism that really gives the songs a big boost.
The end of the film is a big topic of debate. Earlier in the film, Bateman goes on a wild killing spree after a police officer witnesses him kill somebody and starts chasing him. This also happens in the book, by the way. And when he thinks he's surrounded, he calls his lawyer and confesses to all of his crimes, including the murder of Paul Allen. But when he runs into his lawyer later, his lawyer A thinks that the voicemail he left him was a joke. B thinks Bateman is somebody else calling him by the wrong name. And C tells Bateman that he couldn't possibly have killed Paul Allen because the lawyer just had dinner with Paul Allen in London 10 days ago, leaving Bateman perplexed. Now, this exact conversation also happens in the book. So what does that all mean? Does it mean that Bateman never killed Paul Allen? Does that then mean that Bateman never killed anybody and it was all in his head? Personally, I don't think so, and the director of the film, at least, also said that she doesn't believe that it was never her intention to make it seem like it was all in Bateman's head either. First of all, the lawyer mistakes Bateman for somebody else, so that means he could have mistaken somebody else for Paul Allen. And second of all, I didn't have a second of all. I don't know. I hate stories where it was all in his head, it was all a dream. All right, so which one's better? The film is pretty entertaining. It follows the book pretty closely, but wisely leaves out the gore, making it a much more enjoyable experience, in my opinion, while I hated almost every minute of reading the book. So this one was a no-brainer, a very easy decision. In my opinion, American Psycho, the movie, is much better than the book. All right, what are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I could go on and on about American Psycho, but it's getting late and I have to return some videotapes. I'll see you later.